Important issue now. The Department of Mineral Resources recently published the draft mining charter for public comments. Now, this comes after a process of 8 weeks of intensive engagement with stakeholders, including mining communities and social partners. And some of the feedback that the department received, we understand, includes allegations of a double granting of licenses, also allegations of improper application of Section 54 of the Mine Health and Safety Act, as well as backlogs in the issuing of licenses. The period to receive public comment closes on the 27th of July 2018. So to talk to us more about this, we're joined now by Matthews Tlhabane from the Mining Affected Communities United in Action, Makua. Thanks so much for coming through this morning.
Thank you and good morning to all the viewers.
I must SABC. Also just indicate that we are expecting Minister Gwede Mantashe, but whether he makes it on time or not, we need to have this very important discussion. So first and foremost, with regard to the mining communities, what is your first reaction to the draft?
I mean, we welcome the fact that the minister made several attempts to consult with communities. But at the same time, that time was not adequate because that department comes from years of not consulting with communities. And as a result, there are so many tensions everywhere where mining takes place. The problems have multiplied. So to have consultation which is rushed does not actually necessarily meet the purpose or the objective of coming up with a meaningful charter that will actually incorporate all the views of South Africans, in particular from the areas where mining takes place. So the attempt was very good, but it was not adequate because most of the communities that are affected by mining have not been consulted. And the information did not reach out to the communities in time. Sometimes the organization was so poor in that we had communities that were dislocated in terms of the information that was given to them to say the venue is there, only find that there are changes in all of that. So we welcome and with the hope that we'll have enough time to engage with communities, even though resources are a challenge, to reach out to all the communities. To say the 27th of July is still a short time because you produce a draft now, it must filter down to communities. People must go through it, they must understand. Not unless if the purpose is to actually rush it so that it can actually be, the outcome be in favor of those that are pro-mining. We have communities that are not interested in mining at all, communities that are only interested in saving their lives, their health, protecting their land. We have such communities. So those communities will need enough time. Such ideas must be incorporated.
It's a pity the minister is not here to respond to that because I've seen many responses, and it would seem even from some of the minister's own utterances that they have consulted quite widely, but you saying not adequately.
Not adequately, not adequately. I mean, if you take, for instance, the province such as Mpumalanga, the minister only went to Emalahleni. So mining in Mpumalanga does not take place in Emalahleni only. So even the communities around Emalahleni, not all of them were there. So he only went to one section of Emalahleni. That's where the consultation was. So people that were able to travel from far away, people that are already in business, not the communities that are affected. So the communities that are affected were not able to come. People that are coming from as far as, Secunda, Carolina, and so forth, they could not attend the hearings. In KwaZulu-Natal, the same. He went to Newcastle, but you also have the areas down in Somkhele and so forth, Fuleni and so forth. No consultation happened. In Limpopo, the same. So all these areas that have not participated in the process have been excluded. And the hope is that the expectation by the minister is that by the 27th of July, people should have submitted their comments. I mean, people in the rural areas, where do they get, the opportunity to do such? They don't have the resources, the means, the internet, the computers that are required, and such submissions must be in writing. So it's a challenge.
I hear you, Mr. Tlhabane. But I also just want to touch on some of the other issues that some of the other stakeholders have raised. The Minerals Council, for example, they've come out to say they are not opposed to giving back to workers, but, you know, they are concerned about the viability, the sustainability of some of the provisions within this draft charter. What's your take on that?
I mean, for a body such as the Mineral Council, it is expected of them to respond like that. But if it is for the workers, it's a different case. Because the workers are the victims. The workers are the ones that at the end of the day become part of the communities in enduring the sufferings. So the Mineral Council will welcome. But you look at the percentage that is allocated to the workers. Is so little. We have challenged that even ourselves to say those that are victims, especially the mining hosting communities, those that are actually affected immediately by the activities, by the dust, by the vibration levels, by the contamination of water, only to be given about 8%. At the end of the day, if you are a worker, you will get sick and dying of silicosis, that will cost you a lot more than the 8%. So what is given to communities is too little. What is given to workers is too little. Those are victims.
They have complained, though, about some of the stakeholders about that 10% free carry, which, of course, will not be paid for, 5% going to communities and 5% going to labor. So what's your take on that? You know, it's going to be free. And the mining companies, they are saying this will make the mining industry as a whole perhaps more uninvestable in South Africa.
I mean, the reality of the situation is that the mining industry will always complain each time issues that relate to communities and workers are raised. Each time you want to take something from them, they will always complain. They will always try to resist, to block that. So it's a question of saying whether, as South Africans, do we want to see the mining companies taking everything and leaving us to die, and leaving us with nothing as communities and workers? And we are saying no. And in fact, even that 5%, we are saying is too little. It's too little, considering the fact that the mining hosting communities, you take, for instance, Emalahle and Secunda, those are municipalities that are running, they are bankrupt at the moment. So where are those benefits from mining? You are surrounded by all these mining activities, and whereas the liability, if you have to, that mining will actually contaminate your water, and that will lead to a lot of, expenses that are incurred by the municipality. So you get to spend a lot, and what you get is too little.
But if we look at some of the realities on the ground with regard to the mining industry in South Africa in 2018, so you have a sector now that is receiving less investment than it did in 2010. And, there's talk about having to strike this very fine balance between transformation and, of course, making sure that the industry remains viable. Would you agree with that sentiment, first off?
I mean, I will agree if the industry is in the hands of South Africans. If the industry is in the hands of communities and workers. But if it is in the hands of business, those are always applying the art of fungibility. They know when to lie and when to cry. So that's what they do. That's what they do. I mean, after all, we don't get to determine the price of our minerals as South Africans.
But who's to blame for that? Would you say you are going to put that blame squarely on the shoulders of the private sector, of business, or does government have to shoulder part of that blame?
We know very well that the industry is part of a system that works towards weakening the role of your government. I mean, the fact that this mining industry can corrupt. If the mining industry can corrupt, when you start corrupting ministers, corrupting government officials, then you are weakening the government.
But that's a very serious allegation to make on national television, and one that I'm hoping you're not making, just for the sake of it.
I'm not making for the sake of it. This is what we live with. This is what we experience as communities. This is what we see. So
you have the evidence to back this up?
This is what we see.
Government officials being
practically
bribed?
Take your situation of your, what happens with the SLPs. What is happening with the SLPs? Why there is no transparency in that? Why are all these mining agreements not made available and public to communities? I mean, accessible to communities. These are the challenges. Why are some of the decisions around investment rushed without proper, adequate consultation?
But when you allege, you have the burden of proof. And if you're alleging that, you may be assuming this is happening, but can you actually back it up?
We can. It has happened. I mean, the whole issue that we have been debating as South Africans of state capture is not separate from what is actually happening with the mining industry.
Give us an example.
Optimum. Mm-hmm. Optimum, what happened at Optimum? What happened at Optimum? Today, the workers are the victims. Today, it is the workers that are becoming victims, not, those that came in as investors. And they were treated with velvet gloves. So in Emelo, one of the mines that operated right inside the community, operated and community protested, they were protected by officials. Government officials protected them. And the next thing, what happened to that company, it declared bankruptcy. And it disappeared, it left a huge hole. Today, kids are falling into that hole, they are becoming victims. So these are things that are there. They cannot be hidden from the public.
But surely there are rehabilitation funds that have to be ring-fenced for exactly that purpose. Are you saying that this is not happening?
If the rehabilitation funds were working for South Africans, then the communities shouldn't be complaining. We should not be talking about TNDP in Witbank. We should not be talking about, MLO. We should not be talking about areas such as your Carolina. We should not be talking about that. If the rehabilitation fund was put into practice, that rehabilitation fund, where is it? Why is that rehabilitation fund not used to make sure that the unemployed youth in this country is trained to do rehabilitation? Because that fund should be working now. It should be creating job opportunities for the youth. But that rehabilitation fund works somewhere where we don't know.
Well, our guest this morning is, of course, Mr. Matthew Slabane, speaking on behalf of mining communities and representing their interests here. We were expecting Minister of Mineral Resources, Mr. Kwete Mantashe. Unfortunately, no show this morning, but a very important issue that we definitely need to unpack even further, because there's much to understand, but from the community, the affected communities around these mining areas, as Mr. Slabane says, they're not happy with what has been put forward at the moment, least of which is the time that they have been given as affected mining communities to actually comment and consult on this draft bill. We're going to take a short break.
Violent protests